Trippi, troppi, troppa trippa.
Que este juego ya no tiene tanto auge.
Para vestir para impresionar como no.
No, gracias. Prefiero no tener seguidores.
Ok. Tírate gasolina.
No, mentira.
La cagué, pero a ver cómo me... No me puse ni accesorios, no me puse nada. ¿Qué pedo? ¿Esa es una miada? ¿Eh?
Nada. Mm,
Los tríos.
Yo
Ay, hágale.
estoy agüitado contigo.
¿Por qué, mi amor?
Porque me estás ofendiendo.
Perdóname, mi amor.
No, no tienes que ser así conmigo.
Se me ve la puchaina.
No. Yo estaba esperándolos para agarrar el luz y aún así me acusaste.
Perdóname, mi amor. Te
Para la
lo
otra
pido.
sí me voy a chingar de todo el luz yo solo.
Perdóname, mi amor.
No,
Te lo pido, perdón.
no, porque me andan levantando falsos.
Perdóname, por favor.
No. Yo no perdono ese tipo de cosas.
Perdóname, sí, me perdonas. Me perdonas por tu emoción.
Me hace uno chocolatito con leche. Sí.
No hay para hacer chocolate caliente.
¿Cómo no? Pues si compramos
¿Dónde hay?
Nesquik.
¿Cuándo?
Perro, ahí hay una bolsita de Nesquik arriba.
Qué mentira.
Ahora resulta que es mentira. Mm, O mínimo un vasito de leche con mis galletas.
Ahorita te lo llevo.
Gracias. Si quieres pasar el vaso que tengo acá.
Epstein interview. Wait.
Walk me through the whole thing. It starts with a dinner.
Uh-huh.
Take me, just walk me through it.
It was boring. I can't.
You couldn't possibly think it was boring.
It
It's
was.
bullshit.
It was boring.
You had to
No,
be stars
sorry.
in your eyes.
No.
Did you fly over privately?
Yes, but it wasn't my plane.
So it didn't count?
No.
You fly over.
Yes.
And
it was
who were the first, like when you first met those leaders, you had to be wild.
No.
You're 10 years out of Coney Island.
No, I'm not wowed by people of
It doesn't
position.
count.
I'm
I know.
wowed by people of great ideas. And I don't care if it's the bus driver. I don't care if it's the student I had who has teeth coming out.
But
every
these guys
direction.
have to have great ideas as the leaders of the three great continents of the world: North America, Europe, and Japan.
No, many of these world leaders become world leaders because they're popular and they were able to get votes or they were able to convince people to vote for them. I learned later. Many of them were just like good at what they did in terms of politics. Remember, world leaders are politicians in general. They're not scientists. They're not intellectuals. They're not great thinkers. They're great politicians.
At the first Trilateral
Jesus.
Commission meeting that you remember,
He's
in
right.
Tokyo
Yeah, he
in
is.
sometime in the early '90s. Do you remember what were the big issues of the day that they were talking about?
Yeah, in fact, it was.
Una cosa es neta, al final, en el ring, nada más vamos a estar dos y ahí vamos a ajustar cuentas. No es raro que los puercos anden en granjas, ¿no? Entonces, pues, pero terminan los puercos haciéndose carnitas, ¿no? Entonces,
¿no tienes miedo que te metan putazos en el ring?
déjalo que se lo crea.
De eso se trata.
No, déjalo que se lo crea. A fin de cuentas, ya cuando estemos arriba, pues ya lo terminaremos de
Híjole,
jugar,
ahora
¿no?
sí se van a topar cara a cara el 15 de marzo en un ring.
¿Bisexualidad?
Ah, es bisexual además.
¿Eso se veía?
No, no sabía.
Sí, el tipo es bisexual.
No mames. Ahorita tenemos una orden de restricción, pero abajo del ring. Por eso te cambiamos de hotel a ti, porque
Ya
porque estaban en el mismo hotel, se topaban ahí y ya se iban a dar en su madre.
no me gustaría noquearlo.
¿No te gustaría noquearlo?
No, me gustaría reventarle la cara y mandarlo con un...
Ahora con el gran Carlos Trejo, es un honor
Compadre,
tenerte aquí.
No,
compadre.
no, el honor es mío. Que,
¿Eh?
puta, desde hace años.
Tiene 18
Pero
años de historia.
quiero hacer la aclaración a todos. Quiero hacer la aclaración que esto nada más lo pudo haber hecho Poncho. Me habían hablado muchísimas personas y la verdad lo había dejado pasar. Pero cuando ya me hablaste tú, ya platicamos, ya se acordaron detalles, dije va, me la juego.
Ya están todos los detalles, está todo acordado, se platicó bien, están los abogados, la esposa, estamos muy emocionados de que estés aquí. La pelea con Adame, sinceramente, ¿tú crees que con tantos años de historia, cómo comenzó todo? O sea, ¿cómo comenzó el primer
Chaquequi.
encontronazo que tuvieron ustedes?
Pues es muy largo, pero bueno, voy a hacer un pequeño resumen, ¿no? De hecho, esto lo escribí en un libro que se llama Cañitas 30 años después. No es comercial, pero bueno, ahí lo escribí. El señor pensó que podía ofender, agredir, sobajar a cualquier persona que se le pudiera presentar. Cuando convence a mi hermana para que empiece a hablar mal de mí, salir en proyectos y prometiéndole mil cosas, tratando de voltearme a mi familia para satisfacer sus asuntos personales, ahí fue donde, como se dice en el barrio, la puerca torció el rabo, ¿no? Y de ahí pues empezó la bronca, entonces ya nos hemos trenzado varias veces y en una de ellas, pues, en Perisur iba el señor subiendo las escaleras eléctricas, yo iba bajando, se empezó a burlar, lo agarré y ahí abajo le volé los dientes, de hecho traía una placa ahí, su dentadura es falsa.
Ah, entonces ya le rompiste la madre todo el
Ay,
día.
qué
¿Nadie se dio
pendejo.
cuenta?
Sí se armó
A
un
otros
alboroto ahí,
colores,
de
y aún
hecho,
así
hasta
me
llegó
valió
la
verga.
policía y todo, ¿no? La segunda fue cuando se supone que se iba a hacer la pelea, estaba todo firmado.
Él
Y
dice,
bueno.
él dice que tú que cierras las peleas y que al final te rajas. O sea, como
Es que te voy a explicar algo.
¿Qué pasó?
No, pero hay un motivo y una razón. ¿Cómo ¿cómo puedes llevar a cabo una pelea cuando el tipo pone una orden de restricción legal? Donde dice que no te le puedes acercar. Entonces, lleva 4 órdenes de restricción. Entonces le vence una y luego mete la otra y luego mete la otra y luego y entonces
Ahorita tenemos una orden de restricción, pero abajo del ring. O sea, abajo del ring. Por eso te cambiamos de hotel a ti, porque yo que estaba en el mismo hotel, se topaban ahí y ya se iban a su madre.
Sí, la neta sí.
Por eso decidimos cambiarte de hotel.
Los tríos.
Porque si andas muy caliente, puso una orden de restricción de que abajo del ring partan la madre el 15 de marzo en el ring y tú te aguantas o si lo ves, ¿cómo te controlamos?
Sí, está chancho el asunto, pero he tratado de mantenerme y mejor cuando me dijeron, ¿sabes qué? Vamos a cambiar para que no haya problema. Además, digo, entiendo, a fin de cuentas es un espectáculo que es un buen espectáculo y no creo que valga la pena no perder antes de, ¿no? Entonces prefiero mejor mantenerme y que me mantenga así, nada más lo estoy pensando cómo lo voy
¿Qué te imaginas así en el primer round subiendo el terreno?
Pues es que yo creo que hay que disfrutarlo, ¿no? Yo creo que la venganza es un plato que se come frío. Para muchos es un evento deportivo, me queda muy claro. Para muchos veo jóvenes maravillosos que traen muchas ganas, porque es un evento extraordinario en cuestión publicitaria, ¿no? Pero para mí es un ajuste de cuentas y creo que la arena Monterrey se va a quedar chica.
Se va a quedar chica. Estamos esperando ahí más de 20,000 personas en la arena Monterrey.
Creo que se va a quedar chica.
Han tenido varios encontronazos públicos. ¿Cuál ha sido el peor? El que tú digas, aquí sí estuvo. He visto en uno que se caen, que sillas y que le lleva otro que le aventas una botella y le abres la ceja. ¿Cuál ha sido el peor? Así que digas, aquí se puso fea la cosa. ¿Ese de los dientes?
Yo creo que el peor es el que viene, ¿no? Yo creo que el peor es el que viene. Yo creo que esto que van a ver en la Arena Ciudad de México.
No es en la Arena Monterrey.
No, perdón, en la arena de aquí de Monterrey. Híjole, se va a poner choncho. Son muchos años de coraje, muchos años de rivalidad.
O sea, él te volteó a la familia. Él habló con una hermana, una familiar tuyo para que te tirara mierda públicamente.
Sí, y de hecho, es que sí fue una situación muy grotesca.
Eso es lo
¿no?
que más te dolió, que se metiera con la familia.
Yo creo que la familia es sagrada, ¿no?
Sí.
Tú puedes, y yo siempre lo he dicho, en cuestión de publicidad puedes ocupar lo que quieras, pero la familia es sagrada. Y romper esa regla, pues ya rompes el respeto, rompes todo. Yo puedo criticar, por ejemplo, tu programa, no me puede gustar, no es malo.
O a él como persona también, pero ya meterte con terceros, ya está apoyada.
Pues sí, también hay gente que es un poco enferma, ¿no?
Está trastornado. Trastornado. ¿Le va a poner ¿Tú crees que le va a poner una putiza al Vito o no?
¿A quién?
Va con Aldo.
Es que no los conozco.
Es que son otras generaciones.
Sí, güey, es que sí.
No te conoce, Nicolás, nadie te conoce.
Para
No,
serles
como
honrado.
que dice que no.
No los conozco.
Bambini Crosti.
¿Alguna vez? A ver, esto es personal con Adam.
Bambini Crosti.
Mientras estamos grabando promo, pues escucha música y todo. Estamos haciendo el podcast aquí porque
Bambini
para aprovechar
Crosti.
los talentos que vienen a pelear. ¿Esto es personal o solo es mediático?
No, esto es personal.
Pero grande, ¿no?
Esto es algo muy personal.
O sea, tú sí tienes ganas de darle una putiza a la dama y verlo tirado.
No, lo quiero mandar al hospital.
Mandar al hospital.
Lo quiero mandar al hospital.
¿Qué es lo que más te caga de Alfredo Adame?
¿Qué es lo que más me caga de ese güey? El que haya nacido, cabrón. Y eso lo voy a remediar yo.
¡Ah, la madre! Güey. Puedes llegar a desvivirlo. Él dice que tú eres un fraude, que te rajas. ¿Qué le responderías? O sea, que nunca te subes al final de las peleas.
Sigue hablando, no te preocupes. Tú sigue hablando, suelta lo que sea. Al final en el ring nada más vamos a estar 2 y ahí vamos a ajustar cuentas.
¿Por qué crees que Adame te tiene tanto odio?
Pues no sé, pero no es algo que me preocupe realmente. A lo mejor, pues dentro de su gay sex, su bisexualidad.
¿Es bisexual Adame?
¿No sabía?
No sabía.
Sí, el tipo es bisexual.
No mames.
¿En serio?
En serio, no, esa no me
No
la sabía, yo lo veo.
todas las... ¿Quieres oír otra interesante de ese güey?
A ver.
Bueno, primera viene de una mamá que estuvo en Oxford. La señora salió huyendo, obviamente, después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Y bueno, abortó y bueno, pues ese aborto vivió y se llama Adame, ¿no? Pues es que es difícil entender a un sociópata como este, ni sus hijos lo quieren, para que me entiendas, ¿no? Yo creo que su hijo Sebastián es más hombre que este imbécil, ¿no?
¿Sí?
Sí.
O sea, tú dices que Alfredo Adame es gay, pero reconocido públicamente.
No es gay. Es re p***, el cabrón.
Ah, ¿sí?
Sí, totalmente.
Porque sinceramente, o sea, yo lo veo, o sea, como un macho alfa, galán y todo. Últimamente sí le di un besito a Conan en la boca, me sorprendió, pero yo lo veo como
pues, medio, ¿no?
galán de novelas.
Sí, ya ves que decía que quería Ernesto Alonso andar con él, después que cachirulo, y que después no sé quién lo estaba.
¿Qué más le sabes, Adame? ¿Qué más le sabes que nos cuentes que no sabemos nosotros? Porque hay nuevas generaciones.
Pues hay muchos, por ejemplo, de todo lo que estuvo haciendo tratando de lavar dinero. Ahí están los audios, ahí están los videos, de una persona que dentro de un carro, que lo dijo. O sea, todo lo que estoy diciendo yo,
bicicleteira.
él lo dijo.
No, ahí conmigo en el podcast de Jalando, bueno, el programa de Jalando Fierro dijo que había desvivido a 3, lleva 3 o 4 personas.
Sí.
¿No tienes miedo que te putazos en el ring? El Adame, porque, o sea, dice que él pues, es muy bueno.
Y todo. Está bien, ¿no? Déjalo que se lo crea.
De eso se trata.
No, déjalo que se lo crea. A fin de cuentas, ya cuando estemos arriba, pues ya lo terminaremos de
Híjole,
educar,
ahora
¿no?
sí se van a topar cara a cara en Ring Royal el 15 de marzo en un ring donde no puede correr nadie y donde se tienen que dar hasta que uno gane.
No, y hay otra noticia, Hay otra noticia muy padre. Va a tocar el grupo de rock de los Casa de mi grupo. Van a tocar. Va a ser algo muy, muy impactante y pues la neta, como compadre, después de tantos años que nos conocemos, danos la patada de buena suerte ese día al grupo.
Claro que les vamos a dar la patada de buena suerte. En tu salida, en tu presentación, sales tocando.
No, yo quisiera tocar antes, al menos que la producción decida.
Es que
otra
necesitamos
cosa.
acomodarlo en algún lugar. Esa es una de las condiciones también de Trejo, que tiene que tocar el grupo y tenemos que ver dónde lo acomodamos para que se luzcan, para que conozcan la música del grupo. ¿Cómo se llama?
Los Casa.
Los Casa, para que los busquen también a los Casa. ¿Tienen redes sociales o no?
Sí, todo. Búsquenlos en Spotify, las canciones ya están ahí. Es un grupo que va bastante bien. De hecho, pues, se va a tocar también en León. Va a haber un conciertazo ahí junto con Mago de Oz.
Órale.
O sea que va muy bien el grupo.
¿Tú eres vocalista? ¿Tocas algún
Son
instrumento?
3 los que cantan, que es Brenda Barragán.
Hola Rivera.
Yo, en el bajo tenemos una chica muy guapa.
Estoy hablando de...
Y también, bueno, el grupo está muy bien completo.
Bueno,
muy bien.
¿Esto se acaba el 15 de marzo o va a seguir después el pique? Ganes o pierdas, ¿qué sigue después del 15 de marzo?
Pues yo creo que ya ese día...
Se culmina.
Pues yo creo que, a fin de cuentas, no puedes estar todo el tiempo con lo mismo, ¿no?
Sí.
De hecho, yo dejé que estuviera guaguareando. Durante mucho tiempo yo ni siquiera lo pelaba, ni mucho menos. Pero pues obviamente no te voy a negar que el coraje lo seguíamos teniendo y todo, ¿no? Hasta ahora que...
Más que ahora que ganó la granja, ¿qué sentiste cuando le dieron el gane en la granja?
Bueno, no es raro que los puercos anden en granjas, ¿no? Entonces, pues, pero terminan los puercos haciéndose de carnitas, ¿no? Entonces, no, realmente, pues no.
Si pudieras decirle algo a esta cámara, la primera tuya, a Adame, sin filtros, ¿qué le dirías?
Vas a sentir mucho dolor el 15 de marzo, pero mucho dolor. No te la vas a acabar.
Gangster Futera.
¿Alguna vez pensaste que terminarían peleando en un ring, en un escenario como la Arena Monterrey con 20,000 personas?
Bueno, te vuelvo a repetir, se ha intentado hacer varias cosas varias veces, pero ya cuando ve las cosas muy en serio, pone las órdenes de restricción.
Hay una orden de restricción, pero yo creo que no es, o sea, no, él trae todas las ganas de pelear, los dos. Yo creo que no se van a topar más que en el pesaje y va a haber, y en la presentación va a haber 4 personas de seguridad de 2 metros, 160 kilos, y vamos a estar ahí para cualquier cosa, para que no, a lo mejor en el encare no los vamos a dejar que se acerquen tanto. Ustedes se van a topar hasta que sea el 15 de marzo en la Arena Monterrey, en el ring.
Sí.
Ahí ya
veremos.
Y te estás preparando físicamente porque el box es muy cansado, güey. O sea,
no, sí, yo sé. Y obviamente, digo, también entendamos que no soy un chamaco.
Exacto.
O sea, ya somos personas adultas, ya somos personas,
ambos tienen más de 60 años los dos.
Sí. Yo estoy jodido, ese güey está el doble, cabrón. Entonces, hay que hacer ejercicio y trabajar y todo, pero pues también es un buen mensaje para la gente.
Para la juventud.
Para las personas, por ejemplo, ya de nuestra edad, que a veces piensan que su vida se les acabó y que están en los sillones, o que ya simplemente viven solos. Yo creo que es un buen momento para que se den cuenta que se pueden activar, que pueden hacer cosas, y eso puede ser un buen mensaje. O sea, hay que convertirlo también en un buen mensaje.
No, de hecho, pues es deporte, se van a subir al ring a darse en su madre, obviamente te traen coraje, pero es deporte. Pero sí, es un buen mensaje porque nunca es tarde. O sea, imagínate que nunca se hubiera hecho esta pelea y se quedaban así como que no, ya me hice viejo, ya no puedo pelear. Yo creo que es buen momento para que se culmine todo esos 18 años.
Tarde o temprano, hay reporteros aquí en Monterrey que saben que en alguna ocasión nos toparon a los dos, nos pusieron a los dos en el mismo hotel y el tipo se salió del hotel y hay gente. Pero te vuelvo a repetir, yo creo que en este momento no es quién dijo más, quién dijo menos, quién agredió a más, quién. Esto se va a ajustar y punto. Va lo que vaya, lo que tope. El señor tiene derecho a decir lo que quiera, que lo diga, pero yo hablo arriba. En el ring, ahí nada más hay 2. Y uno va a bajar.
Jaimico siempre tuvo razón que el gordo Arce iba a traicionar a Marquitos Toys. Y es que están compartiendo un video que grabó Marquitos Toys estando en Culiacán, Sinaloa, hace tiempo atrás, en el cual el Jaimico estaba celoso del gordo Arce y decía eso y siempre tuvo la razón. A continuación les dejo el clip, dejen su like, suscríbanse y compartan este video.
Para cachorra.
Yo quería tocar este tema porque una vez iba yo manejando, iba Jaimico conmigo no hace mucho. El Jaimico me comentaba que cómo era posible que nosotros empezábamos con el rollo de YouTube de mi canal, pues. No, que llegaste a las peladas y que si cómo era posible eso, pues. Entonces, yo quiero que tú
pues que le dije todo, le llega a su caducidad, pues era un tiempo, fue el consentido, ¿me entiendes? En un tiempo fue tu consentido el que tenías de copiloto ahí. Pero lo que no le cabe en la cabeza es que ahora es mi turno, pues también se me va a pasar y me va a llegar el tiempo de caducidad a mí también. No voy a ser eterno, pues. Pero ahorita es mi momento y ya es lo que le duele.
No, le llega la oportunidad en diferentes momentos.
Sí, a huevo, la de él ya pasó, ella sí
no la saben aprovechar, pues. Y ya está comprobado. Bueno, entonces, de eso quería hablar más que nada. No vamos a cenar, porque ya me dio hambre.
Pues
vamos a cenar, Cuba. Qué bonito lugar. Y el tren está más largo que la...
When I say Hollywood, what's the first thing you think of? These days, probably not films. I got a hunch that you probably immediately think of like evil or terrible,
¿Cuándo vas a hacer la fiesta para nosotros?
implicated in a lot of really bad
¿Dónde
things.
estaba la
Because it seems like Hollywood is kind of a cesspool of some real, pardon my French, jerks, you know, that have done some awful shit.
¿Qué City
But
Light?
what happens when a movie gets made without Hollywood's blessing?
O sea, me salen ejemplos, pero no entiendo la palabra.
It's pretty rare for a fully financed, independent, self-distributed production to actually have like a big box office performance. It's very rare. And in the case of Iron Lung, it is doing something
Las luces de la ciudad.
very unusual. This is a fucking unicorn out there. Iron Lung, which is Markiplier's debut film here, his directorial debut, has already done over $20 million in the box office and has been the #1 movie through the weekend. And this is a fully self-financed, self-distributed film. And he is not the first YouTuber to make a successful movie. So, like, for example, Raka Raka. They've made 2 heaters. Absolute slappers. I tell you, Raka Raka, I think, are some of the best in the business right now. Bring Her Back, Talk to Me. I think they're some of the best in the horror business right now, and they are YouTubers. They, however, do work with A24, so they're a little bit different than Markiplier's case here. But still, they are independent filmmakers and extremely talented. Markiplier, though, I do believe has done something extremely unusual, though, by having actually no A24, none of that involved in this process. Which is why what it's doing right now, I think, is something very interesting that I want to yap about. And I know, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before now, when it was climbing up the box office and it reached #2.
Mar-a-Lago Club, and other related words and phrases. It's a big jump from the previously released Epstein files that included only 130 files with Trump-related references. Now, that said, some of the new files are copies of emails and other records that the DOJ or the House Oversight Committee released late last year, and then many of the others are just news articles and other publicly available materials that landed in Epstein's inbox. And notably, none of these files included any direct communication between Trump and Epstein. As far as what's new, you did have one file showing that a man who worked for Epstein told investigators that Trump, including high-profile figures including former Prince Andrew and Robert Kennedy, had visited Epstein's home. Also, another contains handwritten notes from an interview conducted back in 2019, about 1 month after Epstein died in a cell, and they say that a victim whose name's been redacted remembers being driven to Mar-a-Lago to meet Trump, and that Epstein said to Trump at the time, "This is a good one, huh?" Then you have another file showing that Epstein emailed a private investigator in 2001 suggesting that he had plans to call Trump to talk about Virginia Giuffre, or Giuffre being one of Epstein's most well-known victims, with her dying from suicide last year, and she said that she had been lured into Epstein's web when she worked at Mar-a-Lago. There are then also multiple documents, including allegations that Trump raped a child in these new files, but many of these are based on unverified tips received by the FBI. And so some outlets are actually not publishing those at all due to doubts about their credibility. But with all that, you have many arguing that, no, we do need to show them, we do need to talk about them because they concern the President of the United States. We're saying that, this is a man who had a well-documented friendship with Epstein. He's been found civilly liable for sexual abuse, and, you can hear him on tape talking about you just grab women by the pussy because you're famous. Right? And that is some of these allegations mirror ones made by a Jane Doe in a lawsuit that was filed against Trump back in 2016. And there it was alleged that he and Epstein raped this girl when she was 13 years old, although he denied the claims and the suit was later dropped. And this includes one complaint made by phone in July 2016, which seems to have been made by the same lawyer who represented the Jane Doe. And then there's another document which now appears to have been taken down, which includes a complaint summary from an FBI tip claiming that her female friend was forced to perform oral sex on President Trump approximately 35 years ago, saying she was approximately 13 to 14 years old when this occurred, and the friend allegedly bit President Trump while performing oral sex. And quote, the friend was allegedly hit in the face after she laughed about biting him. The friend said she was also abused by Epstein. The file also says that the investigators, quote, spoke with caller who identified redacted as friend, adding, quote, lead was sent to Washington office to conduct interview. But it's unclear what, if anything, came from this. Also, another tip summarized in the same now deleted file.
¿Quién te está copiando?
Claimed that Trump held, quote, calendar girl parties at Mar-a-Lago where Epstein would bring in children and Trump would auction them off. They're claiming that guests included Elon Musk, Trump's eldest children, and Alan Dershowitz. The document also references Bill Clinton, alleging that he attended Epstein parties and that he, Trump, and others appear in videos of what they call criminal activity. But unlike some of the others, no contact information was provided for this tip, and there's no evidence, timeline, or other verification attached. But that, of course, it hasn't stopped them from going viral online, and it's even attracted the attention of politicians with, for example, Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego writing, there needs to be a thorough investigation of each and every one of these claims. Now, that said, in Trump's defense, you had the Trump DOJ releasing a statement saying some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election, and adding, to be clear, that claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. But with that statement hitting a lot of people kind of odd for a number of reasons, including it sounds like literally Donald Trump's own personal defense in the past, but then also, of course, besides Trump, there are lots of other rich and powerful people who come up in these files, some also in connection to direct allegations of sexual abuse. So for example, there are documents describing claims against convicted sex offender Harvey Weinstein, one slide deck appearing to be an FBI presentation of Jeffrey Epstein investigations describing an allegation that Epstein, quote, told an accuser to give Weinstein a massage during which Weinstein told her to take off her shirt, and saying that when she refused, Weinstein threatened to, quote, get women to come force her to. That same slide includes allegations that Epstein told an accuser to give Wall Street billionaire Leon Black a massage while Black was naked, and that Black made another female perform oral sex. It also mentioned Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, although it didn't accuse him of sexual abuse. Instead, it described how one source reported that Lutnick made his money through Ponzi schemes and money laundering. With Lutnick also coming up elsewhere in the files, with emails appearing to show
Luces de la
Commerce Secretary
ciudad y soy un
Lutnick and his wife
semáforo.
accepting an invitation to Epstein's Island in December of 2012, and they planned to arrive by yacht with their children.
Yo digo
Very
que está
notably, that
bien.
is several years after Lutnick previously said that he had broke contact with Epstein. Emails also appear to show that Elon
Sí,
Musk
pero
lied
eso no
about his
importa
past
cuando
dealings
te
with
metas
Epstein. Ray
en
Musk has famously
un
claimed that
servidor
Epstein
con
tried to
puros
get me to go
amigos.
to his island and I refused. One file that
¿A
appears
mí?
to show that he emailed with
Sí,
Epstein
porque
to
van
try
a
and
votar
plan
por
a
los
visit to
puros
Epstein's
amigos.
Island in late 2013
Ah,
and
eso
early
sí.
2014, asking in one
Ahorita
email
en
what
todos se
day
quedan en el
/ night
5.
would be the wildest party on your
En los
island. And
5,
with
Pero
those,
bueno,
it isn't clear if the
en el
island
primero
visits
quedé en
actually
el
took place.
tercer
As
lugar
far as
y de
Musk,
ahí
he's
los
continued to
otros
defend
2 se
himself,
quedaban en el
claiming
5.
Epstein
Y
hounded
siento
him
yo que no he tenido
relentlessly
malos
to go to his
outfits,
pedo
no sé cómo
island.
explicar. Les
Though for
dije,
many
ahorita
of
alguien
them
trató de
saying that his
copiarme, quién
denials,
sabe
they
cómo le
continue to
quedó.
sound
A
like
ver,
an
ahorita voy a
admission
ver
that he
su
knew that something fucked up
estafa.
was actually happening there. But then also, as far as other big names, we've got to mention Microsoft billionaire
Bien,
Bill
bien, ¿y tú,
Gates.
hola?
There's one new
¿Cómo
email in which
andas?
Epstein suggests that he helped Gates get drugs to, quote, deal with consequences of sex with Russian girls, and that he helped facilitate illicit trysts with married women. Noting is Hollywood filmmaker Brett Ratner. He hasn't been the busiest since he was accused of sexual assault, though he did just direct the newly released Melania documentary. But in the new files, it includes a series of photos of Epstein's New York townhouse with Ratner sitting with Epstein and a woman who's been redacted, as well as a modeling
Frigo
agent who
Camelo.
was associated with Epstein who also died by a suicide in 2022 in prison, waiting
Car,
trial on
car,
sex
cur,
trafficking
cur.
charges. Also others who came up in the file with some apparent ties to Epstein are billionaire Richard Branson, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, New York Giants co-owner Steve Tisch, chairman of the 2028 LA Olympics Casey Wasserman, and former White House counsel under Barack Obama, Catherine Rumler. And actually on the subject of Democrats, you had Bill Clinton's name appearing in the new files several times, mostly communications between his staff and Ghislaine Maxwell about travel and dining plans in the early 2000s before Epstein was
Gané.
convicted in 2008. And all of that as he denied anything doing, and they've also refused to comply with subpoenas from the House Oversight Committee, meaning that there will be a vote soon to hold them in contempt. Also,
Bien,
you're seeing things like
felicidades.
right-wing outlets like
Gané el
Fox News
primer
trying
lugar.
to link Zoran Mamdani
Felicidades,
to
meme.
Epstein, sharing what's been described as a resurfaced photo linking him to an Epstein
Es que no había
publicist. Or with
mejor
CNN showing Mamdani at a
descripción de
luncheon
ser
for the movie Get
de
Out,
las
hosted
luces
by
de la
Kathy Siegel,
ciudad
a
que un
Hollywood
semáforo.
publicist who's already faced backlash for her relationship with Epstein. But anyway, in the photo is also Mamdani's mother, filmmaker Mira Nair. And as Fox News and other right-wing outlets have noted, she is in the finals. Right in a 2009 email, Seagal wrote to Epstein about an after-party at Ghislaine Maxwell's townhouse that Nair attended for a film that she had directed. But that appears to be the extent of any connection so far, though you've also had fake AI-generated
Me llegó
images
otra
going around
encuesta, voy
online
a ver
claiming
cuánto
to
me
show
dan por eso.
Mamdani as a child with his mother, Epstein, and others, even as there are those who do actually have very well-established links to Epstein. So outside of the United States, one of the most well-known associates of Epstein is the UK's former Prince Andrew, whose title was stripped because of all this, and he also appears in this new batch of the files at least several hundred times. And that includes in the form of these kinds of disturbing photos of him kneeling over a woman on the floor and placing his hand on her stomach. The files also show that his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, emailed Epstein for his advice just 2 months after she told London's
Ya
Evening
tengo
Standard newspaper that she would have nothing
97.79.
ever to do with Jeffrey
Muy
Epstein ever again.
bien.
So actually, with all that, you've now had British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and several other officials calling on Andrew to testify before Congress. And this is, you also have a guy named Lord Peter Mandelson already announcing his resignation from Starmer's party after the new file suggested he was paid $75,000 by Epstein in the early 2000s. Meanwhile, abroad, you're seeing a top official in Slovakia resigning his position after photos and emails revealed that he had met with Epstein in the years after Epstein was released from jail. Also, the Crown Princess of Norway is
Ay, ya ves la que te dije que me copió.
ties with Epstein. And ultimately, the
Te
fallout
salió.
from this is staying global, and the extent of Epstein's
Como no le,
connections
es que
isn't just
como
a
ese es el
Of course, some
problema,
of the
porque
questions that
puedes
still
ver
remain
gente
is
que se
which of
está
these
disfrazando o algo así
connections
y te puede gustar su idea, pero como yo tenía desde los 5 minutos que empezó el juego tratando de disfrazarme de eso, o sea, ya no le alcanzó el tiempo. Si yo a pelito alcancé.
There's a lot of correspondence, there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of
Por eso
photographs,
pasa porque
there's a lot of horrible photographs that appear to be taken by Mr. Epstein or people around him. but that doesn't allow us necessarily to prosecute somebody.
But with this, you have Democrats slamming the Trump DOJ for still keeping around half of the files locked away, and with that, you had Representative Robert Garcia adding, "This is outrageous and incredibly concerning," saying they are in violation of the law. "We are demanding the names of Epstein co-conspirators and the men and pedophiles who abused women and girls." So other lawmakers have been concerned by Trump's repeated mentions and said, "What we've seen is sickening, with serious allegations involving the president himself. If this is what they're willing to release, imagine what they're still hiding. Our investigation is just getting started." And then you also had Ro Khanna announcing that he and his Republican colleague Thomas Massie requested to meet with the DOJ to learn more about the heavy redactions and see portions of the files without these blackouts. And you had Khanna also threatening Pam Bondi with impeachment.
But it is not good enough. If we don't get the remaining files, if we do not get the remaining 302 forms, the remaining prosecution memo from 2019, and if the survivors are not happy, then Thomas Massie and I are prepared to move on impeachment or contempt.
But, words are words, actions are actions, and we're gonna have to wait to see what happens from here. Are there some real consequences? Do we get more? Will the day ever actually come where it feels like those in power actually want to hold people accountable? With all these recent developments, everything that you've seen and heard, what are your thoughts here? And then there's more we've got to dive into in just a minute. But first, let me thank a sponsor and say, there is a very specific adult panic that happens when you realize this message is sponsored by Part in 2021. He had become a gun enthusiast with about 25 rifles, pistols, and shotguns. Now, in response to this, you had Trump's DHS accusing ProPublica of doxing its officers and putting their lives and their families' lives in serious danger. You had the outlet countering that concealing the identities of mass law enforcement agents is highly unusual, if not illegal, and prevents them from being held accountable for their actions. And so you have critics of the agency saying, hey, let's make these people famous. Their names are Jesus Ochoa, Raimundo Gutierrez, and Jonathan Ross, right? The one who shot Renee Good. And the resistance, they're not letting up. We saw protests in dozens of cities over the weekend, including Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and Portland. You also have federal judges pushing back, ordering the feds to release unlawfully detained immigrants, or at the very least, give them a bond hearing in countless cases. And that actually brings us to a very positive update in the case of Liam Ramos, right? The
TTT
five-year-old boy
sour.
allegedly used as bait by federal agents to lure his family out of their home. This because on Saturday, he read a court ordering ICE to release him from the Texas detention facility where he's been holed up with his father for weeks, reportedly getting very, very sick. And you saw the next day, ICE actually complying, releasing both the boy and his father, who were then personally escorted back to Minneapolis by Democratic Representative Joaquin Castro. Though also, that's not to say that Liam's family is in the clear, right? You had Deputy AG Todd Blanche actually suggesting quite the opposite on ABC.
The immigration law, the body of immigration law, is much different than our typical criminal process because of the administrative nature of what we do every day. And so to the extent that we need to appeal that judge's decision, I promise we will.
But also with the situation, Liam, he's just one kid, right? His school district, while celebrating his release, noted that there are still 4 more of his fellow students stuck at the same detention facility. In fact, with the Marshall Project saying back in December that at least 3,800 kids under the age of 18, including 20 infants, had been booked since Trump took office. You have the director of the Immigrants' Rights Clinic at Columbia writing in an op-ed for the New York Times, the children at Dilley with whom I've worked over the past year range in age from 2 to 16 years old. A 2-year-old boy was breastfeeding in detention. One 6-year-old boy had leukemia. An 8-year-old girl began wetting the bed. A 14-year-old girl engaged in self-harm. And adding all of these children and their parents were detained despite being eligible for release. ICE has the authority to release these families who are not flight risks on parole and while seeking asylum and other humanitarian protections in the United States. None of these children or their parents had a criminal history anywhere in the world. And that's as numerous reports have detailed the facility's awful conditions: dirty water, worms in food, inadequate medical care, a lack of meaningful educational services, lights kept on 24 hours a day, guards threatening to separate families. In fact, it's just been reported that 2 people there have active measles cases, with DHS and quarantining anyone suspected of having contact with them and barring all movement within the facility. And with all this, you had Senator Chris Murphy responding. This is the facility I was denied entry to a week ago, even though I'm the top Democrat on the committee that funds DHS, and I gave them plenty of notice. I told you they were hiding something. They were. Meanwhile, you're also seeing a ton of scrutiny at another ICE facility in Baltimore, with immigrant advocates long claiming that detainees had little to no contact with loved ones or their lawyers, little access to food and water, and they were denied access to medication. Now, a video has been circulating that reportedly shows a severely overcrowded holding room with some people on the floor. Then, Maryland Representative April McClain Delaney managing to get inside to see for herself, and this is what she described.
It was not a large room, not much bigger than the room that we are currently in, with probably 50 people, concrete floors, a bench around the perimeter, and a makeshift kind of bathroom in the middle that had minimal privacy. It's really only meant to hold people for 12 hours. and it is being used to hold people for 24, 48, 72 hours or longer.
Meanwhile, according to the New York Times, at least 32 people have died in ICE custody since Trump took office, which is even more than Biden's entire 4-year term. Rather than trying to tamp things down, you have Trump ramping them up. With DHS, they're just looking to use all that big, beautiful bill money. Right? So as of December, ICE was reportedly planning to buy industrial warehouses in 23 towns and convert them into detention facilities that would hold some 80,000 people at a time. Now, since then, they've faced political resistance and public boycotts, with warehouse sales in Oklahoma and Virginia falling apart after the owners backed out of the deals. But warehouses or not, Trump's determined to bring the Minnesota model to other states, right? With several hundred federal immigration agents arriving in Maine last week to arrest Somali immigrants. And that has then led to many hunkering down inside their homes, avoiding work, school, and stores in fear of being snatched up off the street by masked men and ferried off to Texas or some other state. Also, according to ICE, they've arrested some 200 people, some of whom are reportedly just asylum seekers with no criminal history. And then, after barely a week, you had Republican Senator Susan Collins announcing that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem had told her that the surge of ICE activity in Maine had ended. It was saying that so-called normal operations would continue, so it's unclear how safe immigrants there actually are. And then even if ICE has left Maine, it looks like they're just going to be moving to Ohio next. Because according to MS Now, the Trump administration is eyeing Springfield, and yes, that's Springfield.
They're eating the dogs.
Lo,
The people
lo
that came
subió
in. They're
el
eating
Ricky a
the
su
cats.
historia
For last year, Kristi
Espérame,
Noem
ahorita
revoked
vengo,
temporary
voy al
protected
baño.
status for over
Espérame.
330,000 Haitians
y le
nationwide,
puse
setting the
yo
expiration
pinche
date for
barbacoa.
midnight tomorrow. In Springfield, it's home to an estimated 12,000 to 15,000 Haitians, so they're reacting the same way that Maine Somalis are, with a local pastor telling 10 TV they're making preparations to stay inside, not to come out of their homes. They are afraid for their children. Just yesterday, I had some Haitians in our church give me power of attorney in case they become separated from their children so we can take care of them. And over the weekend, you had historian Timothy Snyder sounding the alarm, writing on his Substack. To all appearances, and according to local sources, the city is 2 or 3 days away from a federal ethnic cleansing grounded in a hate campaign organized by the vice president and American Nazis. And then you had him describing the playbook here, writing, mental chaos has been created where there was none before, and then that mental chaos becomes the justification for physical chaos. Trump's large deportations, ICE raids that will, in fact, wreck an improving local economy. And then adding, once that physical chaos has been created, it will be blamed on the immigrants who are no longer there. At that point, so to speak, the lie is supposed to become true. You even have Ohio's Republican Governor Mike DeWine coming to the defense of his Haitian residents, saying these people are working and they are hard workers. So I think from a public policy point of view, it is a mistake. It's not in the best interest of Ohio for these individuals who are working and who are workers to lose their status.
Te
Having
dije que
said
ahorita
that, this is
venía.
not my decision. This is a decision
Por
for the
eso te
federal
escuché que
government, for the
regresaste y te
president
estoy
of the United
contando.
States. They're also
Todavía no
not
me había puesto
totally
los
helpless
audífonos.
against Trump's onslaught,
Ah,
because any day
te le
now, a
pregunté
district
por mi
judge is
barbacoa.
expected to rule on
¿A
whether
quién?
Noem's revocation of
A Ricky.
TPS for the Haitians
Mm.
is legal. Plus, you're seeing Democrats in Congress trying but struggling to rein ICE in using what little leverage they have. Or with their fight to limit ICE's sweeping power, now officially causing a partial government shutdown. A shutdown that you saw start Friday at midnight after
Yo digo ya que ponga el piso y ponga algo arriba y ya nos podemos juntar ahí en el patio.
Less there were reforms for ICE. Because while a group of bipartisan lawmakers had announced
Y
they
mi
reached a
barbacoa
deal, and
como
while some
quiera.
Democrats vowed to
Tu
bring against the bill
barbacoa.
that funded ICE in the way to a good killing,
No va a haber barbacoa.
passed the Republican House. Then,
Monse
days
Hernández,
later,
muchas
House
gracias
were
por
able to
ese
stop killed, and that prompted
sub.
massive outrage in
Muchas
Washington. Senate
gracias.
Democrats, they demanded that Republicans
¿Qué
separate
perdón no salí
DHS
yo?
funding from
Pepe.
the larger package so that they can negotiate their demands for ICE while funding other key parts of the
¿En
government.
qué
And
momento
also, I'll
salí
say,
que no me
for
vi?
some quick context
Y
here,
quedé
usually
en
the way
8
that spending
lugar.
bills work is that lawmakers
Que
will
me veo
write up
bien
a
perra
small
con mi
appropriations
pupicho.
bills that'll fund different departments, and then they'll kind of smush those bills together and they'll pass them in larger packages. And in fact, 6 of the 12 smaller appropriations bills have already been signed into law, ensuring that the shutdown would only be partial. And on Friday, you had the Senate approving a deal backed by Trump that would pass 5 of the remaining appropriations bills to fund huge chunks
Tengo
of
que
government.
hacer
But
dúo,
instead of
¿verdad?
approving
No
new
guardar
dollars for
color.
DHS, the measure just extended its current funding levels for 2 weeks so that lawmakers could negotiate ICE reforms. And while the bill successfully passed in the Senate 71 to 29, the House lawmakers, they already left Washington, so they were unable to vote, and because of that, it triggered the current partial shutdown. Though also will say, even though it's partial, the package that's being held up, it funds enormous chunks of the government. In fact, departments that are impacted here, they make up a majority of discretionary funding and include some of the largest federal agencies. In addition to DHS, the funding that's been put on hold includes over $838 billion in defense spending, as well as money for the departments of labor, education, health and human services, transportation, and state. But as far as what's going to happen next, you had House Speaker Mike Johnson telling reporters yesterday that the House will aim to pass the Senate bill when lawmakers return, and Johnson expressing optimism that the lower chamber is going to be able to end the shutdown at least by Tuesday. But also, that could prove to be an uphill battle because you have many
Como
House
clavillo
Dems
oscuro.
opposing the short-term extension passed by the Senate, with some saying they just don't think Trump and Republicans will negotiate in good faith or agree to bold enough changes to ICE. Because among other things, you have Democrats wanting to enact provisions that would bar agents from wearing masks, require body cameras, ban random sweeps and searches without warrants, and prevent kids from being taken from their families. But also beyond that, some Democrats just don't want to vote for any bill that includes any money for DHS, even just an extension of current funding levels. And so in order to pass this bill, Johnson's going to likely need a near unanimous vote from his razor-thin majority. And that could also be hard because many Republicans, including Johnson himself, have said that they oppose placing new restrictions on ICE or other immigration enforcement concessions. But then also, even if Johnson is able to get enough votes to pass this measure, there's no guarantee that Democrats and Republicans are going to be able to come to any kind of agreement on ICE reforms and the funding of the short extension. Because if this bill, it does go through, while the other agencies would get the necessary funding, lawmakers would only have until February 13th to reach some kind of deal for the future of DHS. And if they can't reach an agreement, DHS could shut down starting on February 14th. I'll say put an asterisk on that. Because notably here, while other key parts of the department would be shuttered, like for example FEMA, ICE would still be able to continue operating because of Trump's big, beautiful bill allocating $75 billion to the agency. But then also, let's say there is a world where Democrats and Republicans, they come to an agreement and they go, okay, these are the concessions we're going to do. You would then also have to count on Donald Trump to go, yeah, I'm fine with those concessions on what I've essentially been using as my private army. And actually, on the note of Donald Trump himself, we should talk about him accepting what some are calling an obvious bribe from a foreign government just days before his inauguration. Because you're seeing the Wall Street Journal just uncovering a $500 million deal between an Abu Dhabi prince and the Trump family's cryptocurrency venture. And the specific prince that we're talking about is the Sheikh Tanoon Zayed Al Nahyan, or the Spy Sheikh. This guy is the brother of the United Arab Emirates president, the government's national security advisor, as well as the leader of the UAE's largest wealth fund. He oversees an empire valued at more than $1 trillion, making him one of the most powerful single investors in the world. And for a while now, he's been pushing the US to allow the UAE to access tightly guarded AI chips. And under the Biden administration, he was shot down time and time again. The UAE was only allowed a limited number of
Tim Cheese.
Tim Cheese. China. And in fact, a major area of concern was one of Tanoon's own companies, the AI firm G42, and its close ties to sanctioned Chinese tech giants. And those concerns, they lingered despite the companies saying that they severed ties with China a couple of years ago, especially considering that the UAE and other companies under the Spy Sheikh's umbrella hadn't yet done the same. But anyway, right, this door was firmly closed for the UAE under Biden. But then, when Trump won the election, that door opened again, and Tanoon immediately jumped on it. He held several meetings with Trump and other U.S. officials in the months following the election. That then led to a meeting last March at the White House with Tanoon reportedly telling U.S. officials that he was very excited to work with the United States and AI, as well as a number of other issues. And then you flash forward to
Vámonos.
Talpa di ferro.
Talpa di ferro.
AI chips per year, or making Tanoon's vision of the world's largest AI data center clusters significantly more attainable. And you had supporters of this deal calling it the key to opening the floodgates of investment
Talpa
in the
di
United States and helping elevate
ferro.
technology to the global standard. But that, as you had many others calling this a major coup by the ruling family, saying they hurdled over
Bananita
long-standing
Dolfinita.
US national security concerns and positioned themselves to compete with the most powerful economies in the world. And so already you had red flags waving, but then the Wall Street Journal took it a step further and they made this whole thing just stink of tried and true corruption. Because what hadn't been previously reported is that months before the chip deal was made, in the days leading up to Trump's second inauguration, the Spy Sheikh's emissaries signed a $500 million deal with the Trump family crypto venture. And so you had a crypto company called World Liberty Financial and a
Orangutini
Tanoon-backed
ananassi.
investment firm named Ariam Investment One purchasing a 49% stake in. And the $250 million that Ariam paid up front was reportedly split 3 different ways, and the biggest chunk of it, or $187 million to be specific, it's slated to flow into Trump family entities. So you can see how this revelation, it starts to cause some concern. Also, along with the money, the purchase gave Ariam 2 seats on the World Liberty Board. The reason that's worth mentioning is because
¿Qué onda, Fabián?
executives on the
¿Te
World Liberty
interesa
Board are also
pa
on the board
favor?
of the
Pa
Tanoon-backed investment firm
favor?
named MGX.
Pa favor?
And that firm would later go on to use
favor?
World Liberty
Cappuccino
stablecoin
as-
to complete a $2 billion
Pa
Svinina
favor.
World Liberty, one of the
Bandito
world's largest
Bobrito.
issuers of
¿Qué vas a
stablecoins,
poner
reportedly
en
set
un
them up
juego,
to generate
Fabián?
tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue. Now that said,
Liri, li, lari, la.
Trump, they were very quick to jump in,
Para
saying
que la
there
gente
is no
sepa.
conflict of interest for anyone involved here. And you had a spokesman for World Liberty saying that Trump has not been involved in World Liberty since taking office, and that this deal doesn't grant anyone any sort of access to government decision making or influence over policy. The White House saying President Trump only acts in the best interests of the American public, saying there are no conflicts of interest. But those assurances, they haven't stopped experts from raising the alarm. And so you're seeing people like Kathleen Clark, a law professor and former ethics lawyer, saying that even just the deal between World Liberty and Ariam, that could violate the emoluments clause of the Constitution. Or with Clark saying that the clause is intended to make make sure that no U.S. government official is, quote, in the pocket of a foreign government, and then added, this sure looks like a violation of the Foreign Emoluments Clause, and more to the point, it looks like a bribe. But they're then going on to say that this, quote, should be a 5-alarm fire about the federal government being for sale. And that is due to former top White House attorney adding, my advice as an ethics lawyer would have been clear. You don't do business deals with the families of the leaders of foreign countries. It taints American foreign policy. You then also had prominent Democrats speaking out against this, including Senator Elizabeth Warren, who said that the Trump family and their business partners, quote, sold out American national security in order to benefit the president's crypto company, and added, this is corruption, plain and simple. Congress needs to grow a spine.
Eso, ya se armaron las
That, of course,
chingazos.
seems very unlikely with the current makeup of Congress and the relationship between Trump and the UAE. It doesn't appear like it's going to be slowing down.
Ya se
anytime
armaron
soon.
las
We just
pinches
saw MPX become one of the
chingadazos.
handful of investors selected to operate TikTok in the United States. Right? And we know that members of the Trump administration were found in Abu
¿Cómo
Dhabi
tienes
a couple of
el
months ago.
sombrero? Dame el sombrero, maldito perro.
Then, next up from that today,
Dame el sombrero, maldito perro. Dame el sombrero.
Markiplier, he's a huge YouTuber. He's kind of one of the OGs. His new movie, Iron Lung, which is based on a video game, just released over the weekend, and it made around $18 million, putting it in second place behind Sam Raimi's Send Help. And this is absolutely huge, right? Because he did this himself. There's no studio, no distributor behind the film. He pulled this off alone. And in fact, initially, Iron Lung wasn't even going to get a very wide release, but based on fan demand, it wound up on 4,000 screens. But Markiplier just told fans, hey, call your local theaters, request they play it, it would be great. And that turned into a massive campaign and eventually a massive release. With Mark later explaining, they just went to town on it. That's what makes me tear up. They leapt at an opportunity to help me, and that's what I'll never forget. That's why I'll always swear by YouTube and internet content creation as a platform. And adding, I don't care about making a profit on the things that I do for this. I'm able to afford to take these chances that a lot of people aren't able to take. I was perfectly content if it never got past 50 theaters, which for an independent release is not bad. If it went to 100, I thought maybe I could get it to 200. I'd be happy with that. And then obviously it ended up playing in many, many more theaters. And actually for a second there, Iron Lung even seemed like it was going to come in at the top spot because at the Friday box office, he led on that day with a $9 million haul. But then I'll say it ended up getting weird, right? His stats became temporarily harder to track as some box office charts just stopped listing his film, with Markiplier even saying on Instagram,
So this Saturday, right? I swear I was on this list, but Iron Lung isn't here anymore. There's no numbers for Iron Lung. It took me off the chart, and I thought, hey, maybe that's a fluke. Maybe there's something wrong. But here's Sunday. I wake up this morning, which reports the day before his numbers. I'm gone. I'm not even above Hamnet. Why'd you take me off the chart? I feel like I deserve to be on the chart.
And so that actually turned into a lot of backlash and conversation from people who thought, an independent creator was being snubbed and iced out by the mainstream. But also you had Forbes saying that it was likely that it was maybe some sort of glitch. Because Iron Lung's now back on the charts and on Box Office Mojo, which is the most used chart, it apparently never left in the first place. And last night, while it seemed like it was a neck-and-neck race for the weekend top spot between the two films, he really tried to push people to keep the momentum up.
Sam Raimi chasing me up my own ass. The final hour. So if you got some free time tonight and you want to see Iron Lung, tonight would be the night to make it count. And then Disney won't have the #1 movie for the 10th week in a row.
In the end, Send Help beat Iron Lung in both domestic and international sales, which Markiplier said, he kind of knew was coming.
I milked it a lot. I said it. It was very funny.
Poquito.
I knew that Sam Raimi's movie was going to pass me
Yo
eventually.
quisiera grabar pantallas.
Still, for tons of reasons, you
¿Que
can argue
esta
that
madre
Markiplier is
podría
still
o
the
no
bigger
puedo?
success story here.
Sí.
For one, Mark didn't have
¿Y cómo
20th
grabo la
century
pantalla?
studios behind him.
Con el
So two,
OBS.
to bring in the international sales, he made
OBS?
nearly $22
El que usas para
million
streamear.
on a $3 million budget, which is just crazy. And so far, it
Oye,
looks
hay
like
una opción
fans love
para
it. It has an 89% audience
para
score on
grabar
Rotten
nomás.
Tomatoes, and while some have compared that to its 50%
¿Cómo?
critic score,
Pero
good
pues
people,
aparte,
including Mr. Beast
¿por
himself,
qué no
noted
streameas y ya
some
después
size
bajas
too
el
small,
stream?
and why I think popcorn
Lo
score is a
mismo.
better metric if you're trying
No,
to see if
porque nada
something's
más
worth
quiero
watching online. Which I'll say,
grabar
for what it's
ciertas
worth, it
cosas.
isn't
Pues ya
unusual
después
at all
puedes
for
bajar el video y lo
critic
recortas.
reviews for a tomato score. Though I will say with this pop of success, we should expect more
Es que no
reviews
quiero
from Iron
streamear en
Lung to
esa
start rolling
aplicación,
in
no me
that
gusta.
aren't listed on the Rotten
¿En
Tomato
cuál
rating
aplicación?
right now, because this movie is being
Twitch.
seen as such a
En
success.
Ay,
Twitch.
gané.
Outlets like Forbes saying
En
this may
Twitch.
represent a future of filmmaking where more creators dabble in the space and drag their fan
¿En
bases
dónde
along.
quieres streamear?
So Mark, hoping that it serves a push for indie
¿O en
filmmaking
dónde quieres
as well, that it
streamear?
shows that there is
Para
an audience
empezar, ni
for it, and
siquiera puedo
even critics
poner
adding, hoping that Iron Lung
que
is the
no
final
es
nail in the coffin of that whole young
japonés.
people don't want to
Ay,
go
tú
to
no
the
quieres
movies
hacer
mission
algo.
gossip.
Ya te
Anything
dije
that proves
cómo,
that connecting
métete
audiences would rather
a
have
la
YouTube as a
página y de ahí
pipeline
lo
for movie
cambias.
theaters than a potential
No
replacement for it.
puedo, ya
That, my
te
friends, is the
dije.
beautiful bastard
Porque no
story of Mark
puedes.
Franco Show dive into the news
Ya me dijiste.
Remember, grab what you want while you can.
El otro vez iba a entrar, pero tienes que darme tu código
I'll see you right back here
¿Qué
tomorrow for
código?
another daily dive.
para poder entrar a tu cuenta.
¿Y cómo te lo doy?
A ver, ahorita voy a entrar.
Ah,
Hola, hola, hola. Saludos, saludos.
Cavernícolas, bienvenidos y en este nuevo vídeo, si eres un amante de Game Boy, Game Boy Color y Game Boy Advance, quizás te interesa, ya que te traigo un pack totalmente preparadito por mí mismo, que incluye ROMs de Game Boy Advance y de Game Boy Color para Nintendo Switch. Tengo que deciros que lo he estado probando en PS4 y se ve que esta actualización no la ha hecho correctamente el desarrollador y no está funcionando lo que sería en PS4, ¿vale? Que se lo he comentado al desarrollador. Esta novedad que tiene esto es que ahora añaden lo que es el Game Boy Advance, o sea, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, cosa que antes no estaba, también está disponible para PS4, pero he estado hablando con él porque la verdad le abrí aquí lo que es una sección de cosas que no funcionan y estuve hablando con él y bueno, hay un problema que no funciona en PS4. Directamente, cuando lo hayan arreglado, os traeré el pack también para PS4 para que lo podáis disfrutar a tope. Así que nada, aquí podéis descargar obviamente todos los PKGs para PS4. Os recuerdo que no lo hagáis porque creo que en las últimas versiones no funciona. Los PKGs están creo que rotos y solamente se oye, o sea, la pantalla se queda en negro y no funciona correctamente. La versión funcional que compartí en su día era la versión 6.7, la cual funciona perfectamente, pero no está el sistema de Game Boy. Todo el sistema de Game Boy. Comprar como siempre, pues automáticamente activarlo. Aquí chicos en pantalla tenéis mi Nintendo Switch, obviamente, ¿vale? Y bueno, esto funciona en la última versión del sistema, 21.1.0, no os preocupéis. Y bueno, la guía de cómo instalarlo, obviamente lo tenéis en el comentario fijado, a través de Telegram o a través de Odyssey, que es ahí donde voy a subir a partir de ahora, como sabréis. los tutoriales completos, las guías completas, ya que aquí pues YouTube me bloquean cada vez los vídeos, cada X tiempo y es un coñazo, ¿no? Así que bueno, aquí os muestro cómo funcionaría. Yo recomiendo que para acceder y ejecutar ese tipo de emuladores y tal, lo hagáis con el modo tableta desactivado, así que nos pondremos encima de algún juego, aplicación, etcétera. Mantendremos pulsado el botón R, ¿vale? Mientras iniciamos cualquier juego, ¿vale? Manteniendo el pulsado el botón R. Así venimos aquí al modo Homebrew menú, como veis, sin el modo tableta. Y la que pues en favoritos jueguen las NES. El aspecto con un poco más difuminado, poco más borroso. Pero en fin, aquí vosotros seleccionaréis lo que más os guste, ¿vale? Y ya podréis empezar a jugar a vuestros juegos favoritos de Game Boy.
There's an infinite money glitch in Arc Raiders. And this old cowboy here gonna show you how to do it, boy. Yeah! Take a snitch scanner and go indoors. Set up your console or PC to connect automatically to your hotspot. If you ain't got a phone that has a hotspot, then you're shit out of luck. Wow! Once you're connected to your hotspot, you're gonna pull out the snitch scanner and hold the throw button. Turn off the hotspot and release the throw button almost simultaneously to the beat of something like 1, 2. Then keep spamming the throw button, and on the third throw, turn your hotspot back on. Keep spamming the throw button, and then the snitch will be duplicated. Rinse and repeat, fill that backpack, and get out of Dodge. And sell that sucker for a pretty penny. Each haul being about 138,000 coins to be exact. But if you're wanting unlimited blueprints, materials, and coins, then my boy, Mitch has you covered. And with over 20,000 reviews, they're the go-to for all things Arc Raiders. Don't forget to use code SCOVOTE for 5% off. I go! And get you some, boy, now! There's an infinite money glitch in Arc Raiders. And this old cowboy here gonna show you how to do it, boy. Yeah! Take a snitch scanner and go indoors. Set up your console or PC to connect automatically to your hotspot. If you ain't got a phone that has a hotspot, then you're shit out of luck. Wow! Once you're connected to your hotspot, you're gonna pull out the snitch scanner and hold the throw button. Turn off the hotspot and release the throw button almost simultaneously.
not long ago, a fan-made multiplayer mod for the game Bully got shut down and deleted after 24 hours for an unknown reason. Now, most people were kind of confused as to why this happened, and a lot of people hadn't even heard of the mod before it got taken down. So in this video, I'm breaking down the short-lived run of Bully Online and what actually went on. If you don't know what Bully is, it's one of Rockstar's older games that originally released all the way back on the PS2. It's basically GTA if it was in a school and you could beat up children.
Refreshing, ain't it?
It's actually really in-depth with classes and social circles like bullies.
Say that again?
This game's been sitting in the dust for that long. I think I was like 5 years old when it came out. So when the announcement from Swegda or Swegda, I don't know how to say it, and his team Fat Pigeon Development for Bully Online came out, it instantly became a bit of a talk of the town in the modding community. Now there's a little bit to this because we now know it was a legal shutdown, likely by the demand of Take-Two Interactive, the people who own Rockstar and the game itself. But it's not exactly cut and dry. We've seen them allow other mods like 5M for GTA Survive, so it was kind of up in the air why this one got the boot. There's even been other attempts to revive this game like Bully MP. The MP started for multiplayer and had a hand by the same developer, but didn't really take off because it was just the base game with multiplayer, which if you've actually played the base game, you probably know won't really work because it's all made for single player. Bully Online got some extra attention because it aimed to fix all the glitches and addition of multiplayer features to the game like a character select, multiplayer minigames, a chat, and a whole lot more. They had pretty big plans for a multiplayer mod and it looked like they were delivering on most of it. So after being worked on for months and almost being ready to be released, this is in my opinion probably where Take-Two got eyes on the project. Just before it was ready, development did something that usually isn't done with mods like this, and that's they gave out early access to people who supported them financially, which when you're dealing with a mod that's on a game that you don't own and making money on, that's definitely a way to bring attention from the people who do own it. They'd set up something called a Ko-fi, which is basically a platform that allows people to support or donate, kind of like Patreon. Now it's pretty fair on one hand given the effort they probably put into the mod to want financial support, but on the other you're technically monetizing another game's property, and in the modding community is kind of a big no-no. This was set up for only a few days before they stopped all monetization. Now the reasoning behind this is unknown, but I'm assuming they kind of realized. I don't have any of the proper numbers while it was up. They had a decent chunk of supporters. Despite this, they still had hundreds of active players playing Bully Online until the very end when this was dropped in their Discord. Sad news today, the Bully Online project is shutting down forever, which unfortunately means all the following is going to happen in 24 hours. Our official Bully Online server on swegda.com will be shut down. Development of scripts for Bully Online will stop. The source code will be removed from swegda.com. All our web pages referring to it will be removed. The launcher downloads will be taken down, and all Bully Online account data will be permanently deleted. Straight away, this definitely looks like Take-Two lawyers themselves wrote this up for them to post the way it's worded, but I'm guessing they definitely got a special type of legal threat, because it obviously makes sense to take down the mod, but if you go to Swegda's YouTube channel, there are all these videos about Bully Online. The launch one had like 300,000, and they're all just gone now. During this period as well, the competitor mod to GTA's 5M Yamp also got taken down. This mod wasn't even monetizing either, they were just going to compete with 5M. I can only kind of guess that as a competitor they might have had the potential to lose the money, and even the older Bully mod, Bully MP, that I mentioned earlier was also taken down with no stated reason. Although this could be completely unrelated, but I think the lawyers were just on a killing spree and just fucking cleared them all out at once. One YouTuber, English Ben, who's pretty amongst the GTA community, responded to the announcement saying, "There's 2 rules of modding. Don't create massive buzz around your project. Don't take money for your project. It really is that simple. Bully Online sadly broke both rules and paid the price. These rules may have not been the sole factor for the DMCA, but they make it infinitely more likely." Now in this 24 hours there was radio silence as to why it shut down. There was a lot of support against the mod being shut down, especially since it was reviving such a nostalgic game for people, and even though it was up for such a short period, there were even people gathering to celebrate its final day like it was the last day of Club Penguin. Where is everyone at? It's the last day. Boxing ring.
I think everyone's having like some kind of boxing club. I don't know. Alright, let's go. Put me in, bro.
GG guys, GG. Bully Online, except the mod is too overpowered to be sued or taken down. Yep, the best mod right there. I'm fucking crying, damn.
My game crashed. Bro, I can't believe that the game is gonna be over, y'all.
And so after this, Swegda came out with a 9-minute video called It Was Fun While It Lasted. This was a follow-up to the initial post, and then goes on to say this about the shutdown.
I have some bad news and I have some good news. So I guess I'll begin by telling you about the bad news, and then I'll wrap it up and soften the blow a bit with the good news. Fat Pigeon Development has ceased all development and promotion of Bully Online. That's no longer a thing we're pursuing. I can't get into specifics, but I'll let you take 2 guesses as to who's behind this.
Yeah, he's obviously, and I'm going to say allegedly, talking about Take-Two Interactive, just for clarity. I do think it's weird that he can't actually say or even show this. I've gotten a cease and desist myself. Shout out to T Grizzly. They do try and put in some weird privacy stuff, but none of it is legally binding. At least it wasn't in my case. But like I said, he's definitely got a special type of legal letter, the stuff they had to do, so who knows what he's actually allowed to say.
I've seen a lot of people in the comment section saying that it's because of the coffee thing that we initially did, or because of the fact that we announced the mod instead of just releasing it spontaneously. I've also seen quite a few people getting hostile towards me and accusing me of being behind this. And let me just tell you, unlike all of the people speculating, presuming, and accusing right now, I've actually read the letter that was sent our way demanding that we cease development and promotion of this project. That being the case, me being somebody who's actually read what was said by the company that shut us down, I can tell you that this project would have been shut down no matter what. At one point, they sent us this list of different rules for modding. Like, hey, here's what you're allowed to do, generally speaking, exceptions may apply, and here's what you're not allowed to do. Even if we never did the coffee page and we never announced it and we just released it out of the blue one day, it still would have been shut down. Like, there's no way that this would have survived.
Now, you definitely can't discredit him when he says that the mod was not going to survive no matter what. I think in this situation, he could definitely be right. At the end of the day, it's very much up to the company to decide if they want to allow it, but it's a bit of a straw man's to say that monetizing it had nothing to do with it, since it definitely could have been the thing that brought it to the attention of Take-Two. I think what other modders and people like English Ben mean by don't create buzz and don't monetize is that once a mod's out and playable, it has a way better chance to survive, especially if you're not profiting from it. If you look at other mods like 5M, it was pretty much the exact same thing, but for GTA. Not only did this work by not monetizing and just dropping it when it was done, but it's now owned by Take-Two themselves. It's not to say this guarantees that Bully Online would have worked. There could be other reasons for all we know. Maybe Rockstar are already remastering their game with their own Bully Online. But when you do break those rules, especially before the mod is out, there's no doubt that it brings bad attention to it. It's also not unlike Take-Two to just pick and choose their battles, so they genuinely could have just gotten unlucky with this one. There are countless 5M servers that are actively breaking intellectual property which are just ignored by them. And there's even a Bully server that just ripped out the PS2 map that's still active right now. Also, I'm only snitching because they're pay to win anyway and they suck. Now, the people who paid money for this mod that no longer exists were refunded from what I know of. There's been a couple cases of people mentioning this as a scam, which I don't think it is. I think it was just a bit misguided. I'll show you this last